I hear from those applause you had a great lunch, is that right? Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back for the second half of today's unit summit. It's wonderful to be here with so many partners from government, from the community, from different faiths, to reject division and focus on how to protect each another and our shared humanity. I want to thank Governor Hochul for helping make the summit happen. Already today, we've heard the powerful voices of those who have been impacted by hate. Their voices and their stories remind us why we are working. We are doing here today is so important. I've had the pleasure of introducing a keynote speaker who has been doing this work for a long time. Our keynote speaker today is someone who has spent a career in public service, protecting our communities here in New York City, serving as the U.S. Attorney Office for the Eastern District of New York, and eventually becoming the U.S. Attorney herself. Along the way, she prosecuted cases involving violent crime, civil rights, terrorism, and more. And after many years as U.S. Attorney, our speaker today was nominated by President Barack Obama to become the 83rd Attorney General of the United States, becoming the first African-American woman to hold this office. That's an applause. And as Attorney General, she continued fighting to defend civil rights and promote trust between law enforcement and the community. And she fought hate where it reared its ugly head, like when she announced hate crimes charged against the shooter who killed 9 people at a Bible study at an African-American church in Charleston, South Carolina. Sadly, that kind of hate is still with us today, affecting our Jewish neighbors, our LGBTQ neighbors, our Asian neighbors, and all of us are in harm's way, and too many more. Not only do I have high regards for Attorney General Loretta Lynch, but we have something else in common. She's my soror, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. But it's people like our keynote speaker today who inspires us to continue to fight for a better and a more united future. We are honored to have her with us today to deliver the keynote address at this inaugural New York United Summit. Please join me, stand on your feet, and welcome the former U.S. Attorney General Loretta E. Lynch. Let me see you out there. In the house.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So thank you to all my sorors out there who have always had my back. And you know, I've had to lean on that shield more than once. But for all of us, it's all a sisterhood. It's all a brotherhood. And when we come together, we do great things. We absolutely do. I am so delighted to be here with you all today. I want to thank my friend, my mentor, my inspiration, my soror, Hazel Dukes, for that kind introduction. But I also want to take a moment, we have to thank her for being our moral compass for so many years. We have to thank her. We owe a debt we can never repay. Hazel Dukes has shown us how to keep the faith and keep up the fight. And that is that's the message that we have to internalize. I want to thank also the organizers of this outstanding summit, all of you who've come together to talk about how do we manage this issue of hate crimes in our society. You are taking on a subject, my friends. It has been the challenge, it has been the nightmare. it has been the burden, not just of law enforcement, but really of humanity over the generations. How do we deal with these manifestations of hate in the human heart and how it comes out and erupts upon often the most defenseless in our society? I know you've had great panels in the morning. I know you're set up to have great panels in the afternoon, but I also know that every day you work on this. Every day you teach about it. Every day you learn about it. Every day you fight it. And so to all of you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's amazing what you do. You look into the heart of darkness, always searching for the humanity within. It's important work, it's vital work, but I'm here to tell you, it is challenging work. And what I want to share with you just for a little bit is to let you know that surrounding yourself with the evidence of the grievous harms that are committed against people for no other reason than who they inherently are is something that can become an overlay upon yourself. Some of you may have felt this, but those of us who've worked in this field for a while know sometimes the weight that comes upon you from carrying that burden, sometimes the challenges of supporting and upholding the victims of these heinous crimes. And so, as we come here together today, first of all, glad that we're here together in person again. Thank you for that. But as you use this summit, use this meeting, use this convocation, not just to get the best practices and to learn the latest laws and to form working groups, but use today to reconnect with each other. Use today to recharge yourselves, to restore your commitment and your faith in the ability to make a difference, because you do. You absolutely do every day, even if it doesn't seem that way. So come together and make those human connections that got pulled away from all of us over the last few years. Because if these past few years have shown us anything, it is the importance, the vital nature of human contact. So lean on these interactions today. Let them rejuvenate you, let them restore you, and let them remind you of the power of connection. The power of connection. Because that's the power behind the work that you all do. You focus on what keeps us together, what unites us, rather than what drives us apart. Now, we've had much discussion, not just at today's summit, but in our larger discourse about the rise in hate crimes across this country, but also the divisions that are just tearing us apart. When we look at the topic of the day, we see how this is impacting our most vulnerable friends and family members. This shocking rise that we see in anti-Semitism, in crimes targeting the Black community, the Asian American community, the LGBTQ community, including the group that still has the highest homicide rate in our country, transgender women of color. The list goes on and on. This has led to so much pain, to so much loss across so many communities. But all these communities are linked. All these actions are linked as well by the common thread of fear, the common thread of hatred. It's this irrational fear that seems to grip some people. And it's the fear that if you recognize everyone's humanity, somehow it lessens theirs. It's not pie. You don't cut it up and it's gone. It is an inalienable human right. And the message that we are trying to get across, that I know you are trying to get across, is that by recognizing everyone's humanity, we enhance all of ours. That's what we do. Well, how do we combat this fear? How do we combat this rage that builds in people and erupts over the most vulnerable members of our society? How do we lessen the influence of prejudice, the influence of bias? Yes, questions for the ages. I might as well ask, what's the meaning of life? But I know this, from the work that you are doing, all of you are focused on exactly the right answers. I want to call out three main things that we have to do as we look at not just the rise of hate crime, but the rise of hate in our society in general. Very important that we do all these things. First and foremost, we have to call it out. We have to call out hatred when we see it. Call it out for what it is, and call it out for what it is not. Because it is not the glue that binds us together, it's the acid that tears us apart. It doesn't make someone strong to harm someone defenseless, it makes them weak. It doesn't make our country greater, it makes us small. And you're doing that today with your efforts throughout the year. I was reading about the New York State Crimes Hate Task Force. It's an excellent example of that commitment with its unflinching assessment of the state of hate crimes. And the second thing we have to do, we must maintain, we must refuse to normalize hate. This can never be something that we take for granted after we call it out. And how do we do that? We do it by holding people accountable for their actions and by proclaiming that they do not speak for us and their hateful actions are not what we will allow in a free and just society. There have been prosecutions, there's recent legislation, we have the tools, but we must refuse to make this an everyday occurrence, even if it's happening every day. This is not normal. When people say this is not us, that's probably aspirational, because sometimes I'm afraid it is. But we cannot normalize hate. The prevention that you're working on, the education that you're working on, dealing with the community groups, uplifting and empowering people who are making this world better, that's what we do. We cannot normalize hate. And the third thing that we must do, again, it's exemplified by all of you today, we must come together to diffuse the fear, to diffuse the isolation that breeds this hate. It's not new. It's been around a long time. In fact, I often think of one of my favorite quotes from Martin Luther King Jr. when he was speaking about some of the most rabid racial hatred that he dealt with during the Civil Rights Movement. And Dr. King said, "I am convinced that men hate each other because they fear each other." He's right. They fear each other because they don't know each other, and they don't know each other because they don't communicate with each other, and they don't communicate with each other because they are separated from each other. Those words still ring true today. He was talking about the separation of racial segregation. What we are dealing with is the separation caused by the ever-widening divisions in our society. Whether they're political, whether they're social, whether they're cultural, we stand on opposite sides of a ravine of thought, and we talk at each other. We hurl insults at each other. We are separated. We must come together. It's not an easy thing to do. It doesn't happen every day, but it is the solution. Now, I know that when you think about the topic of the day again, we're talking about hate crimes. We're also talking about the hatred that we see being spewed out from so many faces. It is easy to despair. We see the rise in rhetoric that is literally demonizing people, all based on a distinction without a difference. Whether it's race, whether it's where you're from, whether it's gender, whether it is whom you love. None of that is your heart. But we have let that become something that pulls us apart. We see the widening divide in our country on every issue. Books are being banned. Books. As the daughter of a librarian, this is painful. Not only that, we see the reversal of rights that people gave their lives to achieve. The rising level of all types of violence in this country, occasioned by the rising level of gun ownership in this country. And just as we were beginning to come to grips with the historical forces that have made us vulnerable to this. Just as we were beginning to deal with these issues, we now see efforts to override history, to literally write it out of existence, to deny the pain and suffering of the past, to spare some people discomfort in the present day. Discomfort. And I have to say, if the worst thing in your life that makes you uncomfortable is hearing about someone else's pain, as opposed to living through someone else's pain, you're not doing too badly. You are not doing too badly. But we see this coming. And it is very tempting to think of this as a rising tide that is defeating our efforts, that is pushing back on all the achievements of years past. And yes, laws are being changed. Yes, books are being banned. Yes, we do see this effort to roll back the achievements of so many who've gone before. But if I can leave you with but one thought today, let it be this. That is not the forward-moving force in this country. We are. What we are seeing is a backlash to the years of progress that we have made, slowly, painfully, with the blood, sweat, and tears of so many people on whose shoulders we stand. And it's so strong because of all the work that we have done. What you see out there is not the forward-moving force in this country. We are. Always remember that. Always remember the force of the backlash is equal to the power it is trying to suppress. And we have generated tremendous power and achievement in our lifetime and in those before us. And that's what we lean on. That's what we rely on as we continue to fight this fight. And I know, again, this is hard. We see all the issues of the day. We see the latest school shooting. We see the latest reversal of a woman's right to choose. We see efforts to overturn literally the right to vote. We see all of that. But let me tell you what else I see. I see young people who are refusing to be limited and restricted in who they sit with, who they work with, whom they love, who they are. I see survivors of many of these hate crimes standing up, speaking out, refusing to be silenced, refusing to go away. And I see all of you, committed, dedicated, doing this work as hard as it is. And I know it's hard. I know it is challenging. I know it is tough. I see all of you getting up every day to fight that fight and never giving up. That is what else I see. Yes, these are challenging times. These are difficult times. We are being tested. Our faith in our institutions, in our procedures, in the story of what makes us America is being tested. But we must never forget that our greatest progress, and we have made great progress, has often come after our most difficult trials and tribulations. And what we also have to remember, as we deal with the trials and tribulations of this day, as we sit and talk about how the level of discourse has never been more bitter, we've never seen it more divided, we've never seen people so enraged, we have to remember this has never been easy. It's never been easy. You see, over 200 years ago, we decided what kind of a country we wanted to be. We have yet to get there. That is true. We have not always lived up to our founding ideals, but we have always pushed forward. Over every challenge, we get just a little bit closer. We have held the truth of the equality of all men to be self-evident. We have fought, literally fought and died to maintain a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And we have followed a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. And at every turn, when our own struggles have threatened to tear us apart, we have turned to each other. We've turned to each other to reconnect ourselves with our highest principles. We've turned to each other to give ourselves strength in fighting oppression. We have turned to each other to give hope to those who are seeking the redress of wrongs. We've turned to each other to protect the weak from the strong. And we've turned to each other to give real meaning to the cry of never again. These are our values, these are our beliefs, and when we hold on to them, we do great things. We have before, and we will again. But what we have learned from all of these challenges, and what we are seeing even now, is a lesson for us today. It's not that our values are not true and good. It's not that our efforts are not worthwhile. And it's not that our hearts are not in the right place, because all of that is so. But it's that every generation has to learn to uphold these values and these beliefs. And now, it's just our turn. It's our turn to do it. But I am convinced that with the energy and the commitment of all of you, we have the resources to do all of that. Now, it is easy to get discouraged. I know this. It's easy sometimes, particularly when you live in this world of trying to redress such tremendous wrongs, to think, how do we deal with the darkness that is within us, that continually leads to the types of crimes that you're talking about, the types of incidents that you're talking about, just the pain that you see every day? And yes, I think maybe there is something in the human heart that can pull us in that direction. If I knew how to eradicate it, I would. But even if you see a darkness within us, I am here to tell you there is also a tremendous light. It is there. And when we turn that light on each other, we do amazing things. A little over a year ago, I was privileged to be in Poland right after the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war. I stood there at the border, watching refugees come across, determined to hold on to their identity, determined to hold on to who they were, determined to hold on to their families in the face of the greatest aggression since World War II. I stood there at the border and watched one train after another drop off people who had fled in the middle of the night with nothing more than what they could grab. I stood there at the border watching one train deposit a carload of special needs orphans, driven from an orphanage by Putin's greed and rage, and being sent off into the unknown, into a country that was not theirs, into people they did not know. And I watched a country, Poland, that has had its challenges, we all have to admit, with refugees of all types, open itself in a way that was remarkable to meet that challenge. And I thought to myself, this is the light. This is where we see it. So whenever you think about the darkness that threatens to pull you down, think about all the times that you have also seen that light. When someone has reached out to provide a hand, when someone has reached out to pull someone up, when someone has reached out just to provide comfort. And now, as we try and emerge into this beautiful spring before us and leave behind what is hopefully the last winter of our discontent, let us all re-enter the fray. Let us rejoin the fight, sustained by our faith in our cause, our work, and our connections to each other. But as we do, as we think about all that we have been through and all that we're about to go through, I also want to urge you all to give yourselves some grace. You're dealing with what can often feel like insurmountable problems until you step back and see how we have overcome them before and can do again. And that is frankly the essential nature of our progress through life. And so I will leave you with one final quote. The philosopher Reinhold Niebuhr, he wrote the Serenity Prayer, which is wonderful. But the one I want to leave you with is about how to deal with the insurmountable problems of the day. Niebuhr wrote, "Nothing that is worth doing can be achieved in a lifetime. Therefore, we must be saved by hope. Nothing which is true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we must be saved by faith. Nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone. Therefore, we are saved by love. And no virtuous act is quite as virtuous from the standpoint of our friend or foe as it is from our own. Therefore, we must be saved by that final favor of love, which is forgiveness." And as you gather yourselves again today and go into the fray, I'm wishing for you hope in your abilities, faith in all the works and all the things that you do, the love of your family and friends that sustain you, and the forgiveness that we all deserve for the human foibles that we all endure. Thank you for having me and letting me spend a few moments with you, but thank you also for the work that you are doing now and that you will continue to do. I stand with you, I am inspired by you, and I am so proud of you. Thank you.